Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are listening to the Podium Podcast from. Welcome back to another episode where, of course, it is the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix preview. Well, yeah, bit of a mouthful, but it is Saudi Arabia. It is a track with high speed, lots of safety cars, a lot of action off and on the track. This is a circuit which will hopefully provide us with some good racing, as, to be fair, maybe the last couple of years have not been the best, but 2021 and 2022 showed that it is definitely a track where on-track action can work, it seems more and more difficult as the cars get bigger and bigger. But before we look ahead to this year's installment of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, we're going to, of course, take a look back to the 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, in which Max Verstappen made it his second win of the 2024 season, a 1-2 for Red Bull as Leclerc finished in third. And the main talking point, the main thing I remember, to be fair, from last season is, of course, Carlos Sainz having appendicitis, which meant Oliver Behrman did have to step in. I suppose it was FP3 he only got. Regardless, it was a great display of, I suppose, maturity and really good racecraft from Oliver Behrman. Didn't quite manage to make it into Q3. However, he did the work in the race and he managed to secure a solid P8, I believe. Just ahead of Lewis Hamilton, I think, which is fairly impressive. But that Ferrari was quick because, at the start of 2024, it was flying. It was definitely the second best car to Red Bull. Of course, if we look back a year ago, it was a bit more than a year ago. We look back to McLaren, who managed to secure a P4 and a P8. You really do think how much time has changed over this year. They did have a tendency to start the years off a little bit for worse wear. But, yeah, it's weird to think now. They started P4, P8, and then in Bahrain last year they got P6 and P8. To look now, and they are in their own intra-rivalry team battle for the championship, and it looks like they will be easily favourite for the Constructors' Championship. We also did have a Stroll crash. What a surprise. As he went into the barriers at turn, I believe, 17, the fast left-hander before the back straight. There are a lot of corners which we'll get into in Saudi Arabia, but and also Magnussen managed to get a 20-second, managed to rack up 20 seconds worth of penalties over the course of the 50 laps around Jeddah. Well, of course, we got that out of the way. Let's talk about this year. Street circuit. We have not had many street circuits in Formula 1 in 2025. You can say that Australia was a street circuit. However, this is more of a more natural street circuit. Tight walls, fast track, very, very little room for errors, which makes the Grand Prix, the spectacle of both qualifying and the Grand Prix, a lot more interesting. You also look at the nature of this Jeddah street circuit. Very different to what we've had in 2025. The only one that can really match it maybe is Suzuka. And in Suzuka, we saw that Verstappen was up there as well as Mercedes. So this is definitely going to be something that is very different to what we've experienced. And of course, that means that the cars will react a lot more differently compared to the more traditional circuits we've had of the likes of Bahrain, Japan, Suzuka, Shanghai, which makes going into the weekend a little bit of an unknown. Not that much of an unknown, but still enough of an unknown to make the last segment of the triple header ever more exciting. We also look at McLaren. We see that in the garage, the two different sides of the garage are very split. You've got a driver which has come off a race win with bounds of confidence, and this is a track which has that aura around it of having you need a lot of confidence around here. I'll put it easily for you, because you build up and then come qualifying, you have to make sure that qualifying is superb, because we don't know how difficult it might be to overtake around here. You also give this uncertainty of a safety car. qualifying is ever more important in Saudi Arabia, and which is all about confidence. How close can you get to the wall? How close can you push your car to its limits? Because as we see, unlike Bahrain, if you go off the track, then to be fair, you are only realistically, yeah, you have no room for error. We also turn to Red Bull. Sorry, I forgot to talk about Lando Norris. We also have a driver which has come off a little bit of a poor weekend, considering what his teammate has achieved in Bahrain. Lando Norris does need a very, very solid weekend here to wrap up what has been probably a difficult 2 race weekends. This is a track which he has excelled in before. This is a track that he knows well. He's got 2 more years of experience compared to his teammates. This is also a track where racecraft and race intelligence does come in hand. We've seen that Lando does have that spark. On his day, he is the quickest driver on the grid. We saw that in Australia, a street circuit as well. Can he reignite that spark, which we've seen before? Because he has to. If Oscar Piastri was to win this Grand Prix, then it does put him in the lead of the Drivers' Championship going into the next part of the season, which is something Lando probably does not want in his mind. We also look at Red Bull. Red Bull has come off a very poor weekend. I think a poorer weekend on Verstappen's half compared to Tsunoda's. Can they do something about it? This is a new track, a new start, a new setup that they have to choose. This is a track of confidence, as I said before, which Verstappen can excel in. We've seen that he has won in 2023 and 2024. So he has won the most in Saudi Arabia compared to... he didn't win in 2023. Oh, yeah, sorry. That was a rookie error from me. He won in 2022 and 2024. So he is the driver that's won the most around Jeddah. Can he make it a third win in Saudi Arabia? Only time will tell. I mean, the car, if it's if we've got any representation from this season, if it's anything like Suzuka, then I think Verstappen does have a good shot, because qualifying, as we've seen, regardless of the track, seems ever more important, because it seems that it might turn into a qualifying-like championship. Also, we've also got a temperature difference. We've got a change in the time of year. You look at last year. Last year's Grand Prix was held in March, in the middle of March. Turn to this year, and it is looking late April, which the Grand Prix will be held in, which means that the temperature has gone up, not considerably, but enough to warrant a little bit of uncertainty going into this weekend. This will mean that tyre degradation will be maybe a little bit higher than expected. Also means that it'll prove more of a challenge for the drivers. You're going into a desert, and you've been tasked at street circuit to do 50 laps in heat. It's not going to be fun for the drivers. We'll get onto the weather later, but Bahrain was difficult for the drivers. This might be even more difficult, because you've also got the challenge of a street circuit. Go off the track, there is no hope of you trying to rejoin, because you're more likely than not in a wall. Let's go to the circuit check. The Jeddah Corniche circuit, 50 laps around the Corniche in Jeddah. 27 corners, which is the most we've ever seen in Formula 1, in the more modern era of Formula 1, I could say. 3 DRS zones, 1 on the main straight, 1 on, I suppose, you can't really call it a back straight, but after the, I suppose, turn 10, loop, there is a DRS zone, and then 1 on the official back straight, heading into the penultimate corner, in which hopefully it means that a lot of overtaking happens. We've seen going into turn 1, there's a lot of overtaking, and going into the final corner, there's a lot of overtaking, which gives us some hope that it won't be a Suzuka Japan 2025-esque Grand Prix. We've also got the C3, C4, C5 compounds, which means that the FIA are pushing for more of a two-stopper, because they've opted for the softest in their range. Does this mean that tyre deg is going to be not a factor like Japan? Possibly. Tyre deg, I mean, we saw in Bahrain, tyre deg was high, which meant that a two-stopper was needed. However, here it seems that tyre deg is less of a problem in Saudi, which means that there'll be hopefully it won't mean that a simple one stop will be the equation for many teams. You also look at what the teams favour in terms of setup. You've got the high downforce sector of Sector 1, and then you've got the long straights of Sector 2 and Sector 3. So there is almost a fine balance which teams need to act upon in order to make sure that their car is quick for the race and also for qualifying. You look at weather now. Weather, you've got Friday, Saturday and Sunday, as you would expect in the Saudi Arabian desert, to be extremely warm. 30 degrees on average across the weekend and less than 5% chance of rain. Sunday though, Sunday night, the humidity might play a factor into the drivers' I suppose confidence and preparation. 50% humidity, which is a fair amount, but if you compare it to the likes of Singapore, it is easy work for the drivers. But it means that concentration will be tested on Sunday evening especially. Now let's look at my predictions that I have made for this Grand Prix. Let's go with qualifying first. Qualifying, I've put Verstappen in P5 with Leclerc in P4. Reason being, I think Verstappen will bounce back from I think he managed P7 in Bahrain. I think he'll be bounced to P5. However, I do think that Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren are just that much quicker than Verstappen at the moment. He might not have the most confidence going into this weekend. He was complaining a lot about setup last weekend, which only gives me the impression that it might get worse. Leclerc P4, I think that it will be similar to last time out in Bahrain. A solid P4 will be quite impressive for the Ferrari, which seems a little bit off the pace, but a P4 will be what Leclerc will maximise out of his car. Now the top three, I've gone for Piastri, George Russell and Lando Norris. Norris to take pole. Why? I think Lando will bounce back. He's got that energy about him. He will bounce back in Saudi Arabia, and this is a track where knowledge is key, and I think he's got enough knowledge to take pole around Jeddah. I think Russell will just pip Piastri to P2. Russell's been on form lately, and if it's anything like it's been the last, I suppose, for the whole of the season, then Russell, I think, will get a P2. Mercedes tend to do quite well around here, and I think the form that they have around here will continue. You look at Grand Prix now, and I think Lewis Hamilton will make his way up to P5 from wherever he finished. With Leclerc still in P4, I think a Ferrari 4th and 5th will be solid points from what was maybe a decent weekend in Bahrain, and hopefully they'll build on it to score some valuable points. Piastri, I think, will make it a third position, the last step on the podium. I think that he will not be able to make the moves that he wanted to make in the race, and I think he'll struggle. I don't know why. This is just based on instinct and just gut feeling, but I just don't think Piastri will do as well as he himself will expect from this weekend. I think the top two will stay the same. It will be Russell in second position, and Lando Norris will take the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2025. This will be a great bounce back for Lando Norris. I think that a street circuit will suit him and his driving style. We saw in Australia he managed to fend off anyone in the rain, even Max Verstappen, and I believe that he will do the work that he needs to be done to keep his championship fight alive. Now we look at the middle of the race. This is just completely based on vibes, but I would say Tsunoda will be in P5 with Leclerc, Russell, Verstappen and Piastri heading off the top four on what would be lap 25 of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, biggest surprise, Jack Doohan. I think Jack Doohan has had a very, very solid Grand Prix in Bahrain, and I think he'll just really just build on his confidence and he will excel in Jeddah. Biggest flop, well, I've already talked about him, but I do believe Oscar Piastri will not do as well as he wanted to do. Reason being, I think that he might make a couple of mistakes that he made, for example, in Japan in qualifying, and we see how important qualifying is in 2025. And so I think that he will be a little bit stuck in P3, and he will be thinking of how he should have won the Grand Prix, but he didn't, and his teammate, more especially, did. Crazy prediction. One crazy prediction. I'm going to say no red flags during this Grand Prix, which is very crazy considering that it is a street circuit and we've had a safety car in every single installment of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which is a little bit crazy, but I'm willing to take that risk. Anyway, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix preview. Make sure to like and subscribe. Have a simply lovely day, and goodbye.